Yeah. Okay. Speaking about that, going to Europe
Mm.
now, Russian apparently told the Vucic, Serbia president, that the United States is plotting some kind of thing to
Yeah,
cover revolution and overthrow
yeah,
him. The remarkable now that's nothing new. We know that
no,
the Americans always do this kind of thing, never stop. But
no,
I have two questions. One is, it's pretty remarkable. The United States, I haven't seen even deny that. I don't think they
no.
even deny that. They don't seem to care anymore. That's what we do. It's almost like, yeah, we just, yeah. I think that's remarkable. The other thing is, what exactly does United States want Serbia to do? It's a small
Yeah,
country. Whatever Serbia does doesn't make that big of a
yeah,
difference.
yeah.
Why are they, clinging on pressing Serbia to be their, to be on their side? Why is it so important for them to force a country to do something on their side? I don't
Well,
understand.
because as you put it very well. This is what the Americans do. By the way, just to quickly say, the Americans, the Russians, and the Serbian government are saying that the United States is trying to organize a regime change in Serbia, and the Americans don't deny it. The Indian media is full of stories about how the United States has just organized a regime change, color revolution in Bangladesh. And again, the Americans are not denying it. I mean, it's quite remarkable. If you read
Yeah,
American
yeah.
media reports, they're making no attempt to covering this, to say that all of these allegations, which are being made in India, by the way, are
Uh-huh.
untrue. So, there is, I think, a bureaucratic aspect to this, in that there's now a very, very big regime change community in the United States, various, NGOs and intelligence agencies make huge amounts of money from the paid an awful lot by the American taxpayers to do this
Mhm.
kind of thing. They're just go ahead and do it whenever they can. But in terms of Serbia, there is a specific dimension to this, which is that Serbia is one of those European countries, one of the few remaining European countries, Hungary and Slovakia are the two others, which are withstanding the pressure to, you know, oppose Russia. And this is something that the United States finds intolerable. It cannot, I mean, we're talking about China and
Mhm.
how China is very relaxed about what Vietnam does
Mhm.
overall. I mean, it's not going to, as you rightly said, they're not going to send an aircraft carrier or impose sanctions or try to foment a color revolution in Hanoi. The Americans are completely unlike this. In the smallest country, in tiny Montenegro, they get worried about it. If there's protests in Bosnia, for example, within the Serb enclave there, they get stressed and angry about that too. So they have been trying to overthrow the government in Serbia for almost as long as I can remember, and I don't think there is any specific thing that they want from Serbia. They just want Serbia to be anti Russian, completely against the instincts of its people.
It's remarkable to me. It's still to
Yeah,
this day, all these things seems down to it is still about control, right? They
yeah,
have to control full control of everybody, every
yeah,
country,
yes,
even like you say, the tiny bit of a country that they just it's kind of like irritates them that they cannot control this country. That
absolutely. Absolutely. Total control of the entire international system is what the United States seeks and aims for and has been trying to achieve, by the way, for a very long time, certainly since the end of the Cold War, but arguably even before. And that is the major source of tension in the world today. That is why we have a war in Ukraine, the
Mhm,
crisis in the Middle East, the
mhm.
tension in the South China Sea and in the Taiwan Strait. That's why all of these things are going on, because the United States has this obsessive desire to control everything.
But they have to
By the
accept
way,
it.
can I just quickly say, I mean,
Uh-huh.
I remember thinking this way back in the 1970s. It's a completely forgotten crisis now. But I remember that there was a change of government in Chad, in
Uh-huh.
Africa. And I can even remember the name of some of the political leaders who were involved. Hissène Habré on the one hand, Gukuni Wedai on the other. These are forgotten people today.
Hmm.
And for weeks, dominated the foreign news stories in Washington and London and New York,
Hmm.
because Chad was apparently this important, very important strategic country. Chad! I mean, don't look at it. How could it possibly be important to anybody except the people of Chad? But to the Americans, it was incredibly important, and enormous resources were then brought to bear to support the leader, the person that they supported, and to defeat the one that they didn't. And the result was, by the way, an enormous and terrible war in Chad, which went on and on and on and on. It's the same. As I said, the Americans just cannot leave alone. They cannot accept that other countries have a right to choose their own path and to develop their own history.
And some of the effort, I find it's basically wasting their own time. Like
Yeah.
not long ago, Blinken visited Mongolia. Now, if you look at the map, Mongolia is between Russia and China. So what can Mongolia do other than upset either Russia or China or both? Doesn't Blinken know that? I mean, anybody, if you can read the map, you can see what's the best approach for Mongolia to develop, which is have a good relationship with Russia, with China. All right.
Of course.
But Blinken has to go there to stir some trouble. But doesn't he know this will not work? But
He
still go
doesn't.
there.
He doesn't, because of course, again, the Americans have to have their fingers everywhere. I mean, Mongolia in territory is huge. It's about the size
It's a
of
big,
Europe,
yeah.
but what's got a population, 3 million? I mean, it's and as you rightly said, it's between China and Russia. It needs to have good relations with both. Very old. It was one of the countries which had a socialist revolution, by the way, very early on, which was good for it. I mean, developed significantly. But of course, the Americans say we have to support the Mongolian people in their resistance against Chinese and Russian imperialism and whatever it is. And one gets the sense that the Mongolians want to be left alone to get on with their affairs, and that's very much my sense of the mood in Mongolia today.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, by the way, was a British official who was actually sent to the embassy in Mongolia, and he tells me exactly this. And but again, the Americans can't leave alone, and they will always, of course, find some people who want to accept their dollars and want to try and create trouble. And what you say, your first point, is absolutely true. The amount, I put aside the material cost of trying to interfere in these countries, which is huge. I remember some years ago, about 10 years ago, there was some political crisis in Kyrgyzstan, but other Central Asian states. And the Russians disclosed how much money the Americans had spent trying to organize it. There was $250 million for a small, impoverished country in Central Asia. They got the leader they wanted. The leader fell almost immediately. The thing swung back to the natural alignment of this country with China and Russia. But anyway, put aside the money, which is basically money thrown away.
Yeah.
The mental energy the US wastes on all of this, mental energy which the US could be using to think about and solve its own problems, is just off the scale.
Yeah.
I mean, the president of the United States and his officials, instead of worrying about the fact, that there's an economic crisis in America, that there are all these problems in America, all of that, they're wasting their time thinking about Mongolia and all of these things. I mean, or Chad before or whatever. And that's why America is in the mess it's in now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I really want them to spend more time and energy on the domestic issues. Yeah, absolutely.